Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Kevin Murray. This is his last day of duty after 36 years of service. Sir, we thank you for your service. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors, students on behalf of St Mary's Primary School Bairnsdale, I should say, beg your pardon. And we also welcome Mr Dennis Lyons, representing the Naval Association of Australia, ACT section. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record that they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to leading stoker Campbell Bernard Hill. Campbell Hill, known as Cam, was born on the 11th day of November 1917 in East Coolgardie, Western Australia, the only child of Charles and Emily Hill. The family moved to West Leaderville when Hill was a boy, and he attended the local school. On the 6th of January, 1938, less than 2 months after his 21st birthday, Hill joined the Royal Australian Navy. He was sent to HMAS Cerberus, where he underwent his initial training as a ship's stoker. In late May, he was posted to HMAS Albatross, which was in the process of being transferred to the Royal Navy. Hill was part of the crew that sailed Albatross to England in July. Once in England, Hill formed part of the inaugural crew of HMAS Hobart when it was commissioned into the Royal Australian Navy on the 28th of September 1938. The ship sailed for Australia shortly thereafter. When the Second World War began in September 1939, Hobart initially conducted patrols of Bass Strait before sailing to Singapore the following month. The ship went the following months on patrols and convoy escort duties. In April 1940, Hobart became one of the core vessels in the Royal Navy's Red Sea Force. The ship fired its first shots in anger on the 12th of June when Italian aircraft attacked Aden. After serving during the British Somaliland campaign, Hobart and her crew returned to Colombo for a refit before sailing for Australia. Hobart remained in Australian and New Zealand waters until June 1941, when the ship was transferred back to the Mediterranean. From July until December, Hobart was part of the Royal Navy's 7th Cruiser Squadron and took part in shore bombardments at Bardia and Tobruk, and in operations off Cyprus, Malta, and Syria. Throughout this period, Hobart was subjected to heavy air attacks, but suffered no major damage. On the 8th of December, news of the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor and Malaya was received. That same day, Hill was promoted to acting leading stoker. 2 days later, he was transferred to HMAS Napier. In January 1942, Napier and sister ships Nizam and Nestor were tasked with escorting a Royal Navy aircraft carrier ferrying aircraft to Malaya. After completing this operation, the 3 N-class ships sailed for Colombo, where they joined the Royal Navy's Eastern Fleet. Here, on the 11th of February, Hill was promoted to leading stoker and transferred to HMAS Nestor. After a brief period of escort duty in late March and early April, Nestor sailed to Zanzibar before sailing onto the Mediterranean. In June, Nestor was part of the 7th Destroyer Flotilla, tasked to be part of a large escort for a convoy of 11 transport ships taking supplies to the besieged island of Malta. Soon after leaving Haifa, the convoy came under attack from German and Italian aircraft. In the afternoon of the 15th of June, news was received that another transport convoy, this one approaching from the west, had reached Malta. With the severity of the enemy air attacks and presence of the Italian fleet, it was decided that Nestor's convoy should return to Alexandria. At around 6 p.m., the convoy, located southwest of Crete, came under air attack. A stick of bombs from an Italian bomber straddled Nestor. The explosion severely damaged the ship's boiler rooms, killing 3 Australian sailors and 1 British sailor. One of those killed was Campbell Hill. He was 24 years old. HMS Javelin took the stricken destroyer in tow, but early the following morning, with Nestor taking on water and going down at the bow, it was decided to scuttle the ship. The crew transferred to Javelin, after which, at around 7 a.m., Nestor was sunk by a depth charge. With the sea as their final resting place, Hill and his 3 crewmates are now commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in Devon, England. At some point during his service, Hill had become engaged to Miss Betty Waddington. A sorrowful entry in the local paper recorded her love. Forever I'll remember. Campbell Hill's name is listed on the Wall of Honor on my left among the almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed beside the pool of reflection. You will see him in back row on the far right. But this is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember leading Stoker Campbell Bernard Hill, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. Rusted hulk is their tombstone on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor will the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.